He read other people's letters at night to kill the boredom. One warning, and 3 families collapsed.
The night shift.
After 9 in the evening, the office building in downtown Detroit looked like an empty anthill. The elevators stopped on the lower floors and fell silent, while the glass corridors sank into a hollow electrical hum. The lamps glowed at half strength, as if saving their energy for the next day. The guard post at the entrance was the liveliest spot, but even there routine reigned. Cameras rotated on preset paths. Monitors cycled through the same images. Derek sat in his chair, turning a flashlight and magazine called Family Advice he had found in a drawer of forgotten journals. He cut out crosswords and scribbled notes in the margins, as if that mattered more than his shift. On the first page of his notebook, a table of employee names was neatly arranged. Next to each name, Derek recorded morality points. A plus for helping a colleague late at night. A minus for snapping at the secretary. Sometimes he added comments in parentheses like, "choose chips too loudly," or "suspiciously polite." He called it the Chronicle of Justice, at first as a joke, then as order. Derek saw himself as a kind of guardian of morality in this glass hive. In his imagination, he was the last line of defense against chaos. And yet, he was bored. Boredom as thick and sticky as dust in the ventilation. To chase it away, he started searching the corridors for signs, forgotten mugs, crumpled papers, and eventually, letters. They seemed like clues to other people's fates. That was when he stumbled upon Anne's letter. The paper was crumpled, the handwriting shaky. She confessed to an affair, to being tired of lies. Derek read the lines 3 times. In his notebook, he marked by her name, -3 points, breach of trust. Then he froze, because for the first time he felt a strange thrill. He knew a secret her husband did not, knew something that could destroy or save. For the first time in months, his job no longer felt meaningless.
Morning in the office began as usual. The smell of cheap coffee, ringing phones, hurried talk about parking. Papers flew from hand to hand, printers jammed. Someone kept dropping clips. For the employees, it was an ordinary day. For Derek, a day of triumph. The night before, he had sent Anne's husband an anonymous letter. "Your wife is cheating on you. You deserve to know the truth." He wrote it with the air of a man executing global justice. "I've done what even Columbo wouldn't dare," he thought, as he dropped the envelope into the mailbox. And now, the result. The office doors burst open, and Anne's husband stormed in, red-faced, out of breath, clutching the letter like evidence. "You thought I wouldn't find out?" he roared. "I was ironing my tie last night, and there was sauce on it. We never eat at home. And the coffee maker. You know I hate lattes, and now there's a new one in the kitchen for 2 cups. Anne went pale, then flared up. "Are you serious? You came here over a coffee maker? And the dog. You've been walking it more and more. With him?" "She's a dog. She needs walks," Anne was almost shouting, but her words drowned in the office murmur. Colleagues clustered like theater spectators. Someone whispered, "I thought he already knew." Another shrugged. Well, a stain on a tie is serious. Derek watched on his monitor, holding his breath. He felt like a director of absurd drama. He liked how banal things, a coffee maker, a dog, some sauce, turned into weapons. Anne tried to pull her husband aside, but he rattled on with domestic accusations. The office buzzed with whispers and awkward giggles. Derek leaned back in his chair. In his notebook, next to Anne's name, a new entry appeared. -2 points. Coffee maker. He felt proud. His justice worked. And perhaps this was only the beginning. After Anne's scandal, the office looked like an anthill struck with a stone. Every movement wary, every word edged with suspicion. People stopped meeting each other's eyes. Where reports and supermarket discounts had once been discussed, now there were whispers about traitors. Derek watched this play with delight. That night he prowled again and found new trophies. On the manager's desk lay a folder of medical papers. Derek leafed through and smirked. The money wasn't for debt, as everyone thought, but for surgery, for a hamster named Sergeant Fluffy. By morning, a copy of the document had accidentally appeared in the office fridge next to a milk carton. When colleagues opened the door, the paper fluttered out, sparking guesses and sarcastic remarks. The secretary also fell into his sights. In her drawer, Derek found a thick pink notebook titled Rider of Passion, a secret romance novel full of naive dialogue and descriptions. Derek carefully tore out a page and stuck it with gum to the notice board. In the morning, the whole office debated parody or confession. The secretary turned pale and avoided everyone's eyes all day. Conversations at the water cooler turned into a circus. Listen, this is obviously a plot. Maybe the cameras are watching us, one whispered. Come on, who'd spy on our sandwiches? Another replied, stirring sugar nervously. What if it's accounting? They know everything. Or the fridge is spying. Laughter sounded strained, fear under every word. Derek logged it all neatly. Secretary, -1 for bad writing. Manager, plus for caring about hamster, minus for concealment. He felt less like a guard and more like a judge scoring a bizarre show. And the more absurd the chaos, the more he believed. He alone held the strings. By midweek, the office was a theater of paranoia. Every step followed by a sideways glance, every whisper like an informant's report. That was when a new character arrived, the security consultant. A short man in a gray blazer, carrying a briefcase, constantly chewing long sticks of licorice. He chewed so loudly it drowned even ringing phones, sticky wrappers piled on armrests, folders, the water cooler. At first, staff thought he was just another bureaucrat, but soon it was clear. He asked too many questions, and they were odd. Tell me, who stays after hours most often? Do you think office plants feel pain when watered with cold water? Any secret writers here? Novelists, maybe? People answered awkwardly, then repeated the conversations to others, fueling tension. Derek laughed behind his monitors. To him, the man was a caricature, a short fellow with sticky fingers and silly questions, pretending to investigate. Derek was sure he could outsmart him, but it was precisely the ridiculousness that made the detective effective. While employees puzzled over his nonsense, he gathered facts and cross-checked details. On his rounds, Derek increasingly saw him nearby, at the elevator, in the corridor, at the guard desk. The same chewing sound, the same polite smile, and another off-topic question. "And you, Mr. Guard, don't you think you have too many keys? They must feel lonely." Derek answered curtly, but unease grew. For the first time, he felt that the watcher had become the watched. And though he dismissed the detective as absurd, his subconscious whispered, the hunt had begun.
Derek no longer watched the cameras with his old thrill. Each lens now seemed aimed at him. He felt the detective's breath, even when the man was chewing licorice on another floor. A thought grew in Derek's mind. Time to leave. One night, he came with a large sports bag. Into it, he packed his evidence of truth. Copies of letters, bills, strange notes, everything he had collected. To him, this wasn't theft, but a mission. If it all comes out, I'll show the world what a Columbo I am. But the more papers he crammed in, the heavier the bag grew, until it felt like the ridiculous baggage of a failed spy. On his way out, Derek got stuck in the door. The bag wedged in the frame, papers crackling inside. He tugged, puffed, yanked the handle, finally bursting through with a tear. A few sheets spilled and scattered across the corridor. He scrambled to gather them, but the adrenaline turned into absurd comedy. It felt less like escape, more like slapstick. In the lobby, Derek stopped at the soda machine. The bag tore at his arms. Thirst burned his throat. He slid in a bill. It jammed. Derek kicked the machine. Sheets burst from the bag into the glass window. Among the cans of cola now stuck Anne's letters and pages of Rider of Passion. And then he heard licorice chewing behind him. "Well, Mr. Guard," the detective said, as if greeting an old friend, "decided on a snack?" Derek turned, trying to block the view, but too late. 2 day guards were already there. Calmly, they lifted the bag, papers spilling like confetti after a bad party. The arrest was dry and routine. No chase, no drama. Just a silly scene with a candy bar and a sticky heap of papers on the floor. Derek tasted metal in his mouth. So much for freedom.
The courtroom was as drab as the rest of Detroit. Cracked walls, the smell of old paper and stale coffee. Derek sat hunched in the defendant's cage, as if trying to vanish inside his jacket. The prosecutor stood and read the charges in a flat voice, like a shopping list. The defendant is charged with illegal access to personal information, theft of documents, invasion of privacy. He flipped a page and, without blinking, added, "and with stealing a medical note about a dental visit for a hamster named Sergeant Fluffy." The room stirred. Someone coughed. Someone snickered. The prosecutor adjusted his glasses and continued as if nothing odd was said. Furthermore, the defendant planted a romantic text titled "Rider of Passion" in the office, thereby breaching corporate etiquette. The secretary in the corner covered her face. When Anne's turn came, she rose and spoke in a flat, tired voice. "I'm filing for divorce. The rug in our hallway is old, too. I think it's time to replace it. And I don't want to explain about the coffee maker anymore." She shrugged and sat down. Derek listened, confused. Was this a trial or a farce? His fight for truth had shrunk into a string of absurd details louder than the crimes themselves. The judge sighed. Sentence, several years in prison. Then more quietly, and someone please buy Mrs. Ann a new rug. As guards led Derek out, silence hung. No one knew whether to laugh or grieve. Families were broken, the company lost millions, yet the final chord looked like bad comedy. Handcuffed, Derek thought, maybe Columbo would have done better.
A year later, the office ticked again in its steady rhythm. Lamps still flickered like old fluorescent teeth. Corridors stretched long and empty, as if drawn with a compass. At the guard post sat a new guy. In his headphones, a cheery podcast about inner success. Remember, every day you can start life anew. He chewed gum and lazily glanced at the monitors, as if flipping channels on TV. Cameras showed people at the cooler arguing about pizza discounts, and a secretary trying to tape over a hole in a chair. The guard's chair was the same, dented back, frayed armrest, but now it was just furniture. The new guy leaned back and typed into his phone, "Buy batteries for remote." In the corridor, an old accountant passed with a folder, muttering to colleagues, "Do you remember that guy who thought he was Columbo?" Columbo? Wasn't he IT? Maybe an intern, another shrugged. Oh, then whatever. The topic dissolved faster than instant coffee. People went back to talking about birthdays and a new doormat. The cameras recorded it all indifferently. Doors, elevators, coffee lines. On the screens, it all looked the same, like a repeating background in a cheap cartoon. Corridors were corridors again. Boredom had settled in the building like old furniture. And if somewhere among it a memory of that guard still lived, it looked not like a tragedy, but like a bad story left unfinished.